Hello and welcome to this week's Green Shoots, a history of Irish football with me, Kehlan. Coming up on this week's podcast, we're talking with Iain McCartney, Manchester United author and historian, about the great Johnny Carey and his influence on building a team that would later become known as the Busby Babes. Don't forget to give us 5 stars on whatever platform you listen to us on, and share the show on your own social media as well. Leave a comment as well and let us know your memories from any of the array of podcasts we've done already, or maybe a podcast you'd like to hear from us as well. Now, Johnny, or Jackie Carey, is one of the finest players Ireland has ever produced, captaining both Ireland and Manchester United. He was captain when Ireland became the first foreign team to beat England on English soil as they won 2-0 at Goodison Park. As Manchester United captain, he led them to an FA Cup, a league title, and was the Football Writers Association Player of the Season in 1949. Here to talk to me about him in his Manchester United days is author and Manchester United historian Iain McCartney. I suppose, Iain, maybe talk to us first about yourself. Why Manchester United?
I mean, strangely enough, as far as Manchester United were the first team I can remember hearing about. I always say, thank goodness it wasn't Stockport County or Partick Thistle or something like that. But no, I used to go to my grandmother's on a Saturday night, and she'd have the radio on, and the commentators and everything else would be talking about Manchester United, and it just sort of clicked from there. I mean, I've still got an old trade card album from the late 50s, and it says, put your name in it, put your favourite team, and it's scribbled in pencil, Manchester United. So the proof's there that it's not been jumping on the bandwagon sort of thing. But no, I mean, I said, football was my life. I played county level at school, played amateur level, but I wouldn't play on a Saturday because I wanted to go to football. I went and watched the local side before I ever ventured down to Old Trafford. I went now and again. Then I started going pretty regular, jumping the train and head off to London to watch them, and all over the place. So that was it. I mean, it's been a huge part of my life, and it's something I've never ever regretted. I've got to know one or two of the players, and it's something you never thought about. You watch them playing, and you never thought for 1 minute you'd be friends with them, so to speak. No, but as I say, I've made lots and lots of really good friends over the years, which I've enjoyed so much doing that and getting to meet people. And I got to meet quite a lot of people through my writing. I've done about, over 3 dozen books in United, mainly on the history of the club, because it's something I like. That's the side of the club that I like. Currently, I started doing the Manchester United Graves Society about 3-4 years ago, whereby I tried to find the burial place, cremation details of as many former players and officials as I could. And to date, I found over 820.
Wow.
That's players dating back away to Newton Heath days. It's something I enjoy. I mean, I enjoy the research part of it. Something that I've done with the books. I mean, when you read a book, in my opinion, especially a non-fiction, you want to learn something, whether it's something in a paragraph, a sentence even. You want to say, I didn't know that. So I tried to put something like that into my books, and I think most of them have been well received, and it's something I enjoy doing.
Do you think, I know we're here to talk about Jack Carey, but I'm just interested because I'm always interested to talk to football historians, etc. But I'd be interested to get your opinion on it. When people talk about football these days, and they talk about, the history of football, etc., especially when it comes to such a big club like Manchester United, who've had such a winning tradition in the likes of the Premier League in recent years as well. Do you think that people have somehow maybe forgotten the previous history that's come, and basically that when they talk about football, they don't seem to go past 92, 93 in the Premier League season? So we have young players who don't fully grasp the full identity and tradition of football clubs now because they only see it from, I suppose, the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably more from a personal point of view, but if you speak to older supporters, the history of the club's important, and you find that maybe there's not so many of the, let's say, modern era support sort of connect with the history of the club. But having said that, I find the history of the club's a milestone on their shoulders, because a lot of people say, oh, you've got to play in Manchester United where you've got to have youngsters coming through the system. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. But football's changed so much. You're never going to get what Sir Alex Ferguson got with your Nevilles, your Butch, Scholes, Beckhams, etc. And what Sir Matt Busby got with Duncan Edwards, David Pegg, Eddie Coleman. You're never ever going to get that. Football's changed so much, and I think it's more to do with the modern era. For youngsters, there's so much more for them to do now. Whereas before, when I grew up, and loads of other people grew up, football was it. You go out and play in the fields, the streets, or whatever, morning, noon, and night. And I think this is sort of it's hindered the development of football quite a bit. But no, I find the history for a lot of people starts, as you say, with the Premier League. They forget that there was so much football before then, and football prior to the Premier League. I mean, you watch games now and you've got to shake your head at the way players go down so easy, what they get free kicks for, everything else. They forget that football back in the 60s, even the 70s, it was a physical game. You took knocks. I mean, the trainer was somebody you hardly ever seen on the pitch. You didn't see many sending offs or bookings or anything. And I found that that's a reflection on the period, and it's changed so much. It's changed beyond recognition, really. And I think possibly that's why a lot of the enjoyment for myself just went out of the game. But you find the players from your 50s, 60s, 70s, they're far more adaptable now than rather. Now you get kids, 2, 3, 4-year-old going to coaching schools, and you think, why? I mean, you've got to. I mean, for myself and friends, you developed your footballing skills, if you want to call it that. You developed that yourself. You weren't coached to do it. Nobody told you to do this, do that, or do anything else. But now it's all sort of, it's like a game of chess now. And you see the benches. You have about 20 people on the bench, and that's not even starting with the substitutes. And it's it's a totally different game. And I think it's not the game that it was. It's not the game that you remember, sort of thing.
That being said, you mentioned the players of the 40s, the 50s, 60s, 70s, etc., and so on. And here we are here to talk about arguably one of the finest captains in Manchester United history, and of course the Republic of Ireland history as well, in Johnny or Jackie Carey, whichever you prefer. He used both. But talk to us a little bit about him and I suppose his time at Manchester United. Where does it all begin? Well,
he started off with a youth team in Dublin called Home Farm. He went on to another youth team where he was spotted by I think it was Louis Rocca. And apparently, legend has it, he'd only played 3 games of football before he was sort of scouted by Manchester United. So he came over to Manchester, and another story appears that when he got off the train in Manchester, he seen the newspaper headlines, United signed Star, and he thought, oh, this is a bit strange. But it wasn't him, it was a Blackburn Rovers player who signed on the same day, and he got a one-line mention at the very end of the article. But then he, like a lot of players, Second World War kicked in, they lost a little bit of their playing career. But then when normal football resumed, Matt Busby was in charge, Johnny Carey was made captain, and that was the start of it.
Just give us a brief kind of overview of those war years, because what was happening in football in England, because obviously it was on the front line of a war. So maybe just give us a little bit of an intro as to how maybe players survived them, because I know Johnny kind of like had to make ends meet as well, doing different matches and playing different kind of leagues as well.
Yeah, I mean, the war years disrupted everything, obviously. But from a football perspective, probably more so a Manchester United perspective, they lost their ground through German bombing raids on the docks round about Old Trafford, and they had to leave there and go and play at Main Road, Manchester City's ground. But for Johnny Carey, I mean, a lot of the players, although they maybe posted overseas, they kept playing football. You could go and guest for the nearest football club that you were stationed near, and you could end up playing for anybody. I mean, Manchester United had Stanley Matthews playing for them for one game. Wow. Yeah, I mean, Johnny Carey, as I say, he came back. He was made captain, and United were runners-up in the Football League in the first 3 years of the post-war period. That was like 46-7, 47-8 and 48-9. And then after that, he guided them to the FA Cup in 1948 and never looked back, sort of thing. One interesting thing about Johnny Carey is, during his career with United, he played in every position except for outside left. He even played one game in goals at Sunderland because Jack Crompton wasn't fit. I think that was around February 52. They were going to Sunderland and I think Jack Crompton might have took ill or something. And Johnny Carey played the whole 90 minutes of a 2-2 draw in goals. So, I mean, he's certainly justified his time as a United player. When he arrived, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, he strikes me as the kind of guy who just wanted to play football, and he didn't really care necessarily where he was put. He wanted to be part of a team. He wanted to play football, and that kind of was something that stood to him throughout his career.
Yeah. I mean, when he first came to Old Trafford, he played as an inside forward. If the modern day football supporters know what an inside forward was, he played in the front line. Then he moved back to wing half midfield, and then he moved to full back, where he spent most of his career. But then he moved again, I think, near the end of his career, back into the half-back line. But he was I would say he'd be one of the greatest United players. I mean, United have had a few decent full-backs over here, but if you could pick an all-time great, Johnny Carey he'd be there or thereabouts. I mean, you've got your Roger Burns, your Dennis Irwins, your Gary Nevilles, your John Astons, but I think Carey would probably grab the number 2 shirt. I think testament to that, he was named Football of the Year in 1949. He was selected to play for Great Britain. So, I mean, if you can do things like that, you're a decent player, let's say.
Yeah. Talk to us about that 1948 FA Cup final as well, because I know it's probably, up there with winning the league as well, and some of the great results that team had at that time. Give us a little insight into, I suppose, it's perhaps it was such a huge event to get to an FA Cup final. Even then, there's 100,000 people or near enough at Wembley Stadium for it as well. So it's such a monumental occasion, not only for him because he's leading out the team and lifting that trophy at the end as well.
Yeah, I mean, the 1948 FA Cup final against Blackpool United won 4-2. I mean, it's ranked as one of the best cup finals. What makes it a little bit more interesting, let's say, was that United played every game away from home. Some of that was due to Old Trafford not being in a playable condition, and they played at Main Road, but they still had to play every round away from home. If you take the team as a whole, it was a really good Manchester United team. I mean, alongside Johnny Carey, people like Jimmy Delaney, Jack Rowley, Stan Pearson, Johnny Morris, Alan Shelton, they were all good players, very good players. And I think that 1948 side set the foundation for the post-war Manchester United. Obviously, they grew old, but as Busby had set the foundations for, let's say, the Busby Babes. He brought youth in, and he blended youth with the experience of that 1948 side. And I think players like Johnny Carey, who sort of overlap both, would play a huge, huge part in the development of people like Roger Byrne, Duncan Edwards, etc. I mean, obviously he was a little bit older, but I think back then players would look up to the elder players, let's say, and they would respect them and they would learn from them. So I think that 1948 side was the basis, as I say, of what United became in the 50s. Because obviously Johnny Carey, as well as captaining United to the 1948 FA Cup final, he also captained them to their first Football League success in 1951-52. Roger Byrne played then. I mean, I think, mentioning Roger Byrne, I mean, he took over as captain from Johnny Carey, and he was another sort of versatile player. He, instead of Carey went from the forward line to the full back, Byrne went the opposite way. He went from full back to outside left, and it was his goals that basically won the 1952 League Championship. But then Roger Byrne moved back to full back, and that's where he became a United great.
Yeah, and it strikes me as well that he seemed to relish the leadership role, not in an egotistical way, but certainly he understood that the role of the captain was to be a leader, not simply on the pitch, but also to guide young players, to help them understand the game, to help them fit into the team as well. Yeah,
I mean, I think the senior players would. I think back then they all took a role in, let's say, player development. As I said, way back at the start, football's changed so much. I mean, if you look at the game in, let's say, 1948 or whatever, you're set up, you had two full backs that marked the opposition winners, you had three half backs, one would play basically in front of the others, which created more or less a back four, and you had your front five. Every player had his job to do, and I think that is it's something that should be looked at again now. As I said, Johnny Carey and his teammates, they all filled certain positions, and I'm sure they would coach the youngsters coming through in their positions a bit more about the game. And as I say, I think there was a very important part in United's history. We've got that 48 team that blended into the team of the 50s. Okay, it took a little bit of time between 48 and 1952 and they won the league, and it took another 3 years to win it, 4 years to win it again, sort of thing. But these players were playing their part. And I mean, Johnny Carey, after he retired, he went into management, and he wasn't hugely successful, but he wasn't a failure. I think such things reflect on his career, proving that he was a really decent player.
Yeah, and I've heard him described as that he was a kind of a big guy, so he was kind of built a little bit and strong, but that wasn't necessarily his forte in how he played. He was a smart defender. He understood how to read the game, and it was his brains more than his brawn, I suppose, that kind of really helped him to be a really great defender.
Back then, you were a defender and that was it. Okay, I'm not saying you didn't venture over the halfway line, but I don't suspect you would venture too far over the halfway line. And defending was his job, and he was very, very capable of doing that. Played, I think, 306 league games or so for United, and in 10 different positions, sort of thing. So he was a more than capable player, but I think full back was his best position, and it reflected on how good he was with the honours that he won, the Irish Cup, played for Great Britain, captain in Manchester United. I think he is one of the all-time greats, and I think he's still considered that. Probably if he went to Old Trafford for the next home game and stopped half a dozen people and mentioned Johnny Carey, they'd look at you as if he'd horns or something. They wouldn't know. They wouldn't know who he is. I mean, probably wouldn't know some of the players from the sort of immediate Premier League era. But you find that history is forgotten about now, as we said earlier on, and it shouldn't be, because players like Johnny Carey are a very, very important part in Manchester United's history, and they should be remembered for being so and for what they helped the club achieve and everything else. And it's just, perhaps it's me and some of the other supporters who enjoy the club history, but as I said at the start, the history is important. If it wasn't for the history, Manchester United wouldn't be what they are. Well, I was going to say they wouldn't be what they are now. The history's got nothing to do with where they are now. But I think the success that they've had in more recent times is a reflection of what the likes of Johnny Carey achieved. Because when you think prior to Carey's arrival at Old Trafford, you go into the pre-Second World War years, United were on the brink of dropping into the third division. They were only 90 minutes away from the third division. So if they'd have dropped down there, there's no telling where they would have ended up. They might have ended up like Stockport County or somebody. But I think that due to Matt Busby and Johnny Carey and all the other players from that 1948 side, they created what Manchester United are now, or what Manchester United should be now. But
yeah, it's interesting that you kind of put it that way, because I think people often forget that especially for a team like Manchester United, that the basis of what you talked about earlier, which was, you know, young players, attacking football, you know, development and all that kind of stuff. You can see where that begins in this Jackie Carey era, where, you know, it wasn't just a case of, you know, you putting together a good team. It was about developing young players and matching that with great experience to create an exciting team. And we see that through, you know, we see that developing through the 50s, and then of course, you know, all the fantastic teams that came with the Busby era, etc. So that it really did lay the foundations for, I suppose, what people would consider the style of play that Manchester United should be playing now in the modern era.
I think the style of play back then, I mean, it was basically the same for every team. I mean, you had, as I said earlier, how the formations were. I mean, every team had two wide players, two wingers. And football then was an attacking game. There was no defensive play as such. Yes, you had obviously your defenders like Johnny Carey, but there was no setting your game plan out to play defensive or anything else. Everything was attacking. And I think that's something that Matt Busby played on. I mean, you had Jimmy Delaney in the team with Johnny Carey. I mean, he'd been round the block countless times. I mean, he was on the verge of retirement sort of thing when Busby brought him down to Old Trafford, but he played his part, and I think Busby looked for attacking football. He wanted football as an entertainment, and he wanted to entertain, and I think that's something that's lacking today. But as I say, it was something Matt Busby developed. And I think, again, you're going back in time. I mean, football clubs had scouts. Some of them probably still do have scouts who don't just rely on agents sending you in heavily edited videos. But you had scouts going to schoolboy games and everything else. And this is where Manchester United picked up your Duncan Edwards, your David Peggs, and everybody else. Okay, they signed players, signed Johnny Carey, and a lot of the players were homegrown. It was Busby's philosophy to play attacking football, it's the name of the game. If you don't score goals, you don't win the game. I think this is what Busby looked at. He wanted to play attacking football. He wanted to entertain the crowds. He wanted to win games. He wanted to win honour. And I think this was, as I say, his philosophy. And he adapted his teams to play that way. And I think it was a reflection of him. I mean, Busby was a wing half. He wasn't an outstanding wing half. He was a more than capable one, but he had his ideas about how to play and everything else, and it just seemed to work. It's the basis of what Manchester United were and what they probably should be now.
Talk to us a little bit about the 52 season as well. It seems like it's a pivotal moment for Manchester United. They've been knocking on the door for a league title in previous seasons, and this is the one that gets them over the line, the 52 season. So maybe just give us a little insight into that season and also kind of like, I suppose, how important it was, as you mentioned before, in that kind of building block for the future with Matt Busby as well. I suppose a definitive answer is that they could play that style of football and win championships as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think possibly for Manchester United were fortunate. The Football Association started the FA Youth Cup, and this helped in the development of the players. And the majority of the Busby Babes side came through that FA Youth system. As I said, one or two of them were bought, like Sir Ray Wood, Tommy Taylor. They were bought, but all the other ones, Roger Burns, Duncan Edwards, Coleman, Flynn, Pegg, they all came through the system. So with them coming into sort of Manchester United under Matt Busby, they were coached from an earlier age, and they picked up what Manchester United was about, how Matt Busby wanted them to play. And I think this is how it developed. I know I said earlier that you don't coach players, but I meant from a very, very early age, not when you're a sort of teenager. And I think the FA Youth Cup was a huge plus thing for Manchester United, and it helped them develop the players. These players played together. They could play for the youth team. They could progress into the reserve team, where they might meet up alongside players from that 48 team who were maybe going towards the end of their careers or are out injured, and then they would step from the reserves into the first team. I mean, reserve team football, that's another thing that I think hinders players just now, because football's a squad game, whereas when you had your reserve teams, you'd be playing against players that were highly experienced, who were out injured or whatever, and you took the knocks and everything else that came with it, because if you were a young lad and you come up against a seasoned professional, he'd say, all right, I'll teach this one a thing or two, and you would find it difficult. So it was a school of heavy knocks sort of thing, and I think that was beneficial in the building of the Manchester United team of the 50s, which snowballed into the team of the 60s. There was a few barren years until Ferguson came along, but I think he had the same type of outlook as what Matt Busby did, and that's what we've seen in the 1990s.
Yeah. I've read that that Busby regarded him as right up there with some of the greats that he managed, Bobby Charlton, George Best, etc., in terms of his playing ability and his influence on the team as well. And would you say that that's a fair assessment?
Busby would have his faults like everybody else. I mean, I think mentioning George Best, I think he's maybe a bit too lenient with him at times. I mean, and that snowballed onto other managers like Wilf McGuinness and Frank O'Farrell. But no, I mean, I think Busby is a father figure. I think he'd be very approachable as a man, as a manager, and he took time out to sort of look after the players. He wasn't just someone that sat in the office all day long. I mean, Busby, unlike managers from the pre-war era, Busby would pull on a tracksuit and get out in the pitch and have a kickabout with them. So I mean, he was there. He was seen to be about. He was approachable and everything else. And I think those players, like they did under Ferguson, they grew up under Busby. They respected him, and I think that was another huge part of the Manchester United history.
Yeah, and you mentioned Johnny's managerial career as well. It was kind of a strange one. It never necessarily really took off in terms of, I suppose, the at the heights of his playing days. But he was a respectable manager and respected by the players of the clubs that he did manage as well. So from that point of view, I suppose it was successful.
Yeah, I mean, he managed Nottingham Forest, Blackburn Rovers, Leyton Orient, and he won the league. I think he won the second division title with Leyton Orient. So, yeah, he was a successful manager. He wasn't totally successful. I mean, he didn't take any of the clubs to first division glory or anything like that. But I think he ran a steady ship. He used his experience well. So, yeah, I mean, it's difficult for many former players to become successful managers. I think that was proof with England 1966 World Cup winning side, how many of them went into management and how many were actual failures. But no, I mean, I think if you take Johnny Carey's footballing career as a whole, yeah, it was very successful. I mean, successful as a player, semi-successful as a manager, and I think you could say he was one of the all-time greats of English league football.
What do we know anything about what he was like off the pitch? Do we know anything about him? What was he like as a person?
A very quiet, unassuming guy. Someone tell me, I think he also he ended up working for Trafford Council in an office job. So I mean that sort of reflects on what football was like. I mean, he didn't make millions, thousands of pounds out of the game, and he was quite happy to take up an office job with the local council. So I mean, he's not a player that I'd ever seen. Not anybody I'd ever seen at games. I think I might have seen him out in the pitch prior to the centenary match against Real Madrid, and that's about it. But he's not someone I've ever seen face to face. But I think, as a whole, as I've said before, he's up there when it comes to naming an all-time great United squad, and he'd have to be considered for a place in that team.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. It was his leadership skills that really people were drawn to, and his ability to be that leader is probably what he's most remembered for at a time when United, in a time in United's history when they needed a strong leader, you know, on the pitch, etc., to kind of to be that person that kind of leads everything along the way. That he was that person to do that, and I think that's something that's really quite interesting. Is his leadership skills as well as his ability to play football. Yeah,
I mean, I think if you mention the name Johnny Carey, what immediately springs to mind? Oh, former United captain. I think that's the sort of definition of him. You think of him as a captain before you think of him as a former Manchester United fullback or a Republic of Ireland international. And being captain, he obviously had responsibilities, and I think he was highly respected by his teammates and obviously youngsters that came into touch with him in latter years. But no, I think he'd be a very influential captain, more so because he filled all those different positions and everything else. But I think he was a leader on the pitch, and I think he'd also be a leader off it. I mean, I say he got voted Football of the Year and everything else, so he was respected not only by Manchester United supporters, so he must have been respected by the football writers to win the Football of the Year award. So, yeah, I mean, I think his leadership is arguably his number one quality.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the player of the year as well, because he wasn't just winning Player of the Year. He was winning Player of the Year with some extraordinary players that were in the league at the time, not just Manchester United, but across the league. There was just some outstanding all-time greats were in the league with him as well, and he managed to win Player of the Season. So that gives you an idea about just how good he was and how influential he was.
Yeah, certainly. With being a fullback, you don't sort of associate fullbacks with getting too many awards. They've got to be outstanding in their position and in their play to win awards like that. So yeah, for Johnny Carey to be named Football of the Year, he must have been, let's say, something special in that particular period of time.
I wanted to talk to you as well, just because we kind of touched that at the start too, which was about the importance of history of clubs, the importance of knowing the history of clubs and where clubs have been and come from as well. As somebody who's written extensively about Manchester United and the history of the club, how important is it that people understand where a club has come from, and why is it important for people to remember where clubs have been in their past?
History, any type of history is important. I mean, if you don't document it, it gets all forgotten about. With the history of Manchester United, I mean, a lot of people think that history of any football club began with the Premier League in 1992 or whatever. But with the history, you've got to remember where football clubs came from, how they developed, how the game developed, and everything else. And with Manchester United, as I said earlier as well, I mean, they were 90 minutes away from the third division, and you can't imagine what would have happened if they had got relegated. So if you look back on the history, it's very, very important. I mean, it's not just the threat of relegation to the third division. The Munich disaster in 1958, that would have devastated any football club, but United managed to come back. They had youngsters there that would pull the red shirt on and play for the red shirt, and they got to the cup final. I think that reflects on how the club had been built from that post-war era of Johnny Carey right up to the 10 years later at getting to the FA Cup final in 1958. And I think more should be done to protect that history. People should remember the history. As I say, it is a milestone in the club's shoulders. They say, oh, you've got to do this, you've got to play this way, you've got to play that way. But as was said earlier, football's changed dramatically, but the history is still there. It shouldn't be a milestone on the players of the present era's shoulders. It should be something that's remembered, something that's celebrated, and the players like Johnny Carey shouldn't be forgotten.
Yeah, I think that, like, particularly for here in Ireland and League of Ireland football, I think sometimes people forget, that the clubs that they support, maybe the ones outside Dublin anyway, that their team won the league, 4 or 5 times back in the 60s, or, they had, 4 cups in the space of 7 seasons or something back in the 50s, etc. And understanding that, your club, did do things. They have achievements. They have things that you should be excited about and want to know about, because these are important milestones in that club's history and kind of developing from where it is now. So, particularly obviously with this podcast, it's really important that people make that connection with the historical past of a club, because I think it means more when you understand the ups and the downs and the 90 minutes away from relegation and the European Cup wins that came from that, etc., and teams that developed from there. So I think that people would probably have a greater appreciation for a club if they understood those kind of things more.
Most definitely. I mean, as we've been saying, the history is important, and it shouldn't be forgotten. And I think I think more attention should be paid to it. You'd find that a lot of those players people have got to remember that they weren't multimillionaires. They weren't paid a fortune for playing. Most of them, if not all of them, would have a job to do. They'd train in the morning and they'd go and do some form of work in the afternoon or whatever. I mean, Tom Finney at Preston, he was a plumber. You can't imagine some of the current lot going out and doing a painting and decorating job after training or anything like that. But I mean, this is how football's changed, and people have got to remember that. Perhaps it's me liking history so much and everything else, but yeah, as you said, the history side of things should be remembered, should be respected, and certainly not forgotten about. I mean, the Premier League, what it is, and people should look back at games and players from the past and give them a bit more thought, give them a bit more respect, and just remember them when football was a game, and it was probably an outlet for everybody's life. There was no television or anything else, so they went to football on a Saturday, and it was something there to be enjoyed. And as I say, sadly, today's game doesn't produce that same enjoyment, the same quality of players and everything else. And as I said at the start, players like Johnny Carey and the players under him at United in the late 40s, early 50s, and then pushing on to the 50s and 60s. You've got to remember all these players, not just the greats, not just your Duncan Edwards, your George Best, your Dennis Laws, your Bobby Charltons. Our football team's 11 players, where it was, and you should remember the whole team. And it does no harm to sort of look back on these games and remember the players. And I suppose when you do that, you've got to think, oh, I wonder what Johnny Carey was like. I wonder what such and such a player was like. So this is where they should go and pay a bit more attention, because you can pick up newspaper reports and everything else on the internet very, very easy, and it gives you an idea of what football was like, what games were like, and everything else. I mean, you could go onto the internet or subscribe to the British Newspaper Archive and trace Johnny Carey's career right back to his days in Dublin. So, yeah, I mean, people should pay a bit more attention to the history and not just the modern game.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Iain, if people want to have a look at some of your books, get some of your books and have it on their shelves as well, where can they get them?
I did a sort of trilogy. I mean, strange enough, I didn't do it in order. I did Building the Dynasty, which was just prior to the Second World War up to 1958. And I did Rising from the Wreckage, which covered 1958 up to 68. And I did Busby's Legacy, which covered 68 up to 73. I mean, those three books in my opinion, give a good reflection of the history of Manchester United in that period from, say, the immediate post-war year up to the end of Mark Busby's time as manager of Manchester United. And I think it reflects on the games, the players, and everything else. I also did one called Irish Reds many, many years ago, probably out of print now, and it covered the careers of players like Johnny Carey, George Best, and other Irish players. But I think with the books that I have done, that trilogy, Building the Dynasty, Rising from the Wreckage, and Busby's Legacy, they're ones that, if you want to know about history of the club, I would say get them. I think No, I think Rising from the Wreckage, it went out of print, but I think it's being republished this August, so they'll all be there somewhere.
And we'll put a link to maybe where people can find that as well, and give it another shout out at the end of the show too. But thank you very much for joining us. It was absolutely fantastic. Really enjoyed it, and thanks for being our little insight into our own Johnny Carey.
Yeah, no problem at all. Anytime.
Well, that's it for this week's show. My thanks to Iain McCartney, author and historian on Manchester United. You can find Iain's books on amazon.co.uk as well. And his first name is spelled I-A-I-N. That's I-A-I-N, Iain McCartney, where you can find a good selection of his books to enjoy. Remember to share the show on your own social media to let people find out about the history and heritage of Irish football. And remember to support your local League of Ireland and Northern Ireland Football League teams. It's our heritage, it's our game. Bye for now.